Imagine serving 20 years as a Navy boatswain's mate, giving your youth to the military, and returning to civilian life with a body that barely works. Now imagine the Department of Veterans Affairs looking at your medical records and deciding your service only warrants a 20% disability rating. For 2 decades, his daily reality consisted of heavy physical labor. He spent his deployments wrestling with massive equipment in unventilated engine rooms and enduring high-stress environments in the Persian Gulf. That kind of sustained physical punishment leaves a mark. By the time he left the Navy, he was dealing with a wrecked lower back, shooting neurological pain down his legs, and a persistent, undiagnosed difficulty breathing. He did what most veterans do. He hired a law firm and waited. But passive waiting is a dangerous strategy. His Board of Appeals case sat stalled for 4 years, and his attorneys stopped returning his calls entirely after 2020. Being ghosted by your own legal team takes a heavy psychological toll. When the VA system ignores your claims for years, it can feel like an institution you served is quietly insisting your injuries aren't valid. Relying on a third party to passively manage a file is a trap that leaves thousands of veterans stranded. The VA system is an immense bureaucracy. It does not move out of pity. It moves when a veteran takes active command of their own paperwork and forces the issue. His first tactical move was cutting the dead weight. He formally fired the absentee lawyers, stripping them of their power of attorney so he could take direct control of his case. Next, he needed intelligence. He submitted a VA Form 4138, a statement in support of claim, to legally demand a complete copy of his VBMS file. That is the Veterans Benefits Management System, the internal database holding every rating decision, medical record, and internal communication the VA had about him. With his records in hand, he overhauled his approach. He stopped writing to the VA about how much pain he was in. Pain is subjective. Instead, he adopted the VA's own internal metric, functional loss, which measures exactly how a condition restricts movement and limits earning capacity. He rewrote his personal lay statements to reflect strict objective reality. Rather than saying his back hurt, he detailed the severe bilateral sciatica that made it physically impossible for him to put on his own socks in the morning or carry a bag of groceries into his house. The VA rating schedule is built on these specific definitions of impairment. While a rater cannot quantify a feeling of pain, the law requires them to assign percentages to documented physical limitations. With his musculoskeletal claims locked in, he launched the second prong of his attack. He applied the PACT Act, expanding benefits for toxic-exposed veterans, to address his chronic respiratory failure. He documented the specific, localized hazards of his active duty environment, identifying the daily inhalation of exhaust, JP8 fuel fumes, and mold in unventilated ship compartments. This official high-resolution chest CT scan report proves internal damage. It explicitly details moderate bilateral cylindrical bronchiectasis. The impression section confirms calcified lymph nodes and old granulomas. This imaging confirms a clinician's note that this scarring pattern is consistent with Southwest Asia particulate exposure. He compiled this data into a structured, multi-page self-statement, labeled version 5, that meticulously arranged the evidence for the VA rater. The statement presented a tight logical chain, starting with documented toxic exposures, linking them to symptom onset, confirming damage with CT scans, and concluding with current functional impairment. He also linked his sleep apnea as a secondary consequence to his respiratory damage and PTSD. By weaving medical imaging together with a chronological narrative of exposure, he provided the rater with a file that was difficult to ignore. This is the signature block on VA Form 21526EZ. With his evidence package compiled, he bypassed further waiting by submitting a fully developed claim, taking direct ownership of his fate. When it came time for his compensation and pension exam, the CNP exam, he followed one rule. He didn't talk about his past military experiences. He spoke exclusively about how his service-connected conditions restrict his life and his employability today. The evidence-first strategy finally broke the dam. Based on his detailed functional loss, the VA granted a 60% rating for his intervertebral disc syndrome, an additional 10% for sciatic nerve damage in his left leg, and another 10% for his right. This is his actual printed VA decision letter, officially granting him 100% permanent and total disability. The combined rating table reveals his progression, from 20% in 2020, moving to 80%, and finally 100% PNT, securing significant back pay and lifelong security. The VA bureaucracy rewards veterans who abandon passive waiting and attack their claims with an organized, evidence-first strategy. You have the right to demand your file, audit your records, and take control of your own outcome.